Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sean. I'm marketing coordinator for the Data Incubator, and today we are going over an info session about our Data Science Foundations course. Thank you all for joining us. Today we have a lot in store for you, but first a little bit about our company. The Data Incubator started as a fellowship program for PhDs and master's students who are looking to make the transition from academia to industry. We train these people over the course of 8 weeks and prepare them for jobs as industry data scientists. At the same time, we connect them with our hiring partners and get them hired as data scientists professionally. We also provide corporate trainings for companies who are looking to train their overall workforce, as well as hiring services for companies who are looking to hire very talented and skilled data scientists that have been through our fellowship program. Today, we're talking about one of our online courses, specifically our Foundations course, which is the introductory course for our data science career track. And I'm joined today by Sarah, our online learning director, and Don, the instructor for the course. And just a little bit more information about the company. We also run a free monthly webinar series that we call Data Science in 30 Minutes. You can find out more information about that on our social media as well as on our website. And we encourage you to sign up and join us for those as well. Sarah's going to give us a little bit more information about the Foundations course.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah, and I work on the online learning team at the Data Incubator. We also have, as Sean mentioned, one of our data scientists in residence, Don. Don's the instructor for both Data Science Foundations and our Applied Machine Learning class. Both are starting in September. So Don and I are going to answer your questions regarding Foundations, but to get us started, I wanted to just give everyone a quick overview of the course contents and structure. Foundations is a part-time online course. It's taught over a period of 8 weeks. Lectures are held on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Don teaches those lectures live, so you actually have the opportunity to ask questions and interact with your classmates the same way you would in a classroom setting. That said, all of the lectures are recorded and shared with the class, so if you're not able to make one of those live lectures, you can catch up whenever your schedule allows. The Foundations course focuses on 2 skill sets. The first is data wrangling, and that's essentially using Python to extract, clean, manipulate, and analyze data. The second focus is in predictive analytics, and that's really a review of the statistical and mathematical underpinnings of machine learning. The goal, of course, is to combine those 2 skill sets and have you coding in Python at the end of the 8 weeks and building your own predictive analytics models. So that's a very high-level overview. If you have any specific questions about the course curriculum, you can ask Don. And if you have any questions about format or setup or timing or general questions, I am happy to answer them. Sean, will they be entering them in this chat? Do you have any questions yet?
Yes. Everyone, please enter your questions in the chat if you have them. We're happy to take them and answer them. Anything that you guys have questions on. In the meantime, Don, can you tell us a little bit about what the students would expect to learn in their first class, in their first week?
Yeah, within the first week, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when the first week we'll focus on object-oriented programming. That's sort of the main concept regarding Python, and we'll make sure you establish very good skills with object-oriented programming because a lot of the Python packages we're dealing with are built around that principle. So we'll make sure we build that foundation before we move on with the course. And specifically, one of the first tools we'll be getting familiar with is Pandas. It's Python's main package to do data wrangling and data analysis. We usually say that 90% of data science is data munging, data cleaning. So we make sure that you have those skills polished off, you're comfortable with those skills before moving on.
Great, thank you, Don. And how experienced do students need to be in object-oriented programming or in Python to be able to succeed in this course?
Yes, we asked the students to do a short course through, I believe it's Coursera.
Code Academy.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's through Code Academy. And that right there is just to make sure that you understand sort of the principles and the basics of Python before you start the course. If you're not familiar with Python to begin with the course, you're going to fall behind. So we ask you to do that short course through Code Academy to make sure that you have a basic knowledge of Python. And regarding object-oriented programming, it's important to be familiar with it, but we do review it within the first week, and we do make references throughout the course. So usually with object-oriented programming, you might not catch all the principles, not understand everything regarding it, but we'll do see some of those concepts throughout the course, so they'll be reinforced.
Great. And Sarah, in terms of the success outcomes of the course, the people that have joined the course in the past, have you heard any good feedback from them? Any stories of people that have had success with the course?
Yeah, absolutely. We just hired one. So that's a pretty good indicator. We get a lot of feedback from a lot of folks who do this course, and it's really interesting to see what they take away from it and how they're applying it. I would say one of the best parts about foundations is that regardless of what industry you're in or what role you're in, you will utilize the skills that you learn in this course. Data literacy is becoming so important. So of course, your ability to program and your ability to analyze large data sets is key. That said, we have alumni at Google, we have them at Uber, we have them at a lot of the big tech organizations, as you'd expect. We also have students applying their foundation skills in a lot of interesting ways at World Bank or IMF. Really what you decide to do with it, it varies quite a bit, but we definitely have good feedback. And as I said, one of our students who took the foundations course, our machine learning course, and then the data science fellowship, we just hired as a data scientist in residence at the Data Incubator.
Great. And we just started offering job placement support, correct?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit?
Sure. So we work with MRI Network, and MRI Network is one of the largest national staffing organizations in the US. So the way that we work with them is if you're interested in job support, you send us a message. We ask you to fill out a survey that highlights very general things, what specifically you're looking for, what geographies you're looking for roles in, any background or skill sets that are relevant to data science. You fill out that form, you submit it, and then every time that we have a new role open up, we review our database, and if you're a good fit for a role, we reach out to you directly.
Awesome. And Don, do you find that people tend to kind of have a big improvement over the course of 8 weeks? Is there, are these kind of skills that you learn in the background and just move forward with, or do you see people really kind of improve and move forward and actually kind of start to become data scientists?
Yeah, I would definitely see that because so for this course, we have 2 mini projects that you guys work on. And usually as the course goes, as those projects go on, the questions are harder, but I noticed that there are a lot of questions that people ask in the beginning that are rather, I wouldn't say simple or low level, but you can understand that they're asking questions that they show that they don't have as much knowledge. But as they progress the mini project, they start asking higher level questions or questions that aren't impeding them based on the previous questions they've asked. I know that I kind of muffled that question, but I definitely see the progression. Yeah, I definitely see the progression. The fact that these questions do get harder, but they are more effective answering them. The fact that once they go through the first mini project, the second one they tend to go faster through, even though I would argue is perhaps a little more difficult, but given that improvement, that learning curve, they can ease through it, or they start asking more detailed questions or more higher level questions.
Thanks. And I just want to remind everybody that we're taking questions in the chat. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat. You will need to be signed in with a Google or YouTube account to be able to submit questions, but we are very happy to answer them if you guys have any. And Don, can you just take me through like a quick overview of the mini projects that are part of the course?
Yeah, we have 2 mini projects. So I'll discuss the first one. It's a Quando mini project, but basically you'll be familiar with how to work with an API to get data from the internet. And once you've downloaded this data onto your machine, you're going to do some data analysis with it. And usually for these mini projects, we break them down into various questions. And each question, we have a grader that scores your answer to each question. And the score goes from 0 to 1, and we ask that you have to achieve a value of 0.9 or greater for each question to move on. And it's not this very open-ended project, but we do break it down for you as you go through the questions. As you go through the questions, they're progressively kind of build upon the entire theme of the mini project. So it's a very guided experience, but it's very interactive. It's for each question, it's open-ended, so you tend to work on your own solution. And once you've created your answer, you can pass it to our grader. And you get immediate feedback on how well you did for that question before you move on to the rest.
Excellent. So yeah, we're still waiting for questions here. But we are happy to answer any questions you guys have. And in the meantime, continue taking you through the course. Sarah, is there anything you can tell me about kind of the format of the course, how the students connect? And I think maybe we can go over the schedule as well and the time of the class and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, it's taught over a period of 8 weeks. So the next course starts on September 11th, and I believe it wraps up the first week of November. Lectures are held twice a week, and those lectures are usually 6:30 to 9:30. Part of that lecture time is usually devoted to office hours, so that's a great opportunity to ask questions. If you're working on one of those mini projects like Don described and you're running into an error, the grader is spitting back an error message, that's a great time to surface those questions with Don. So those lectures are about 6 hours a week. And then in addition to that, you'll be working on the mini projects. The time commitment there can vary depending on how familiar you are with Python, your understanding of the material, how much time you put into it from day 1 versus week 8. But I would budget another 6 to 8 hours per week. So it's about 12 to 14 hours per week for the 8 weeks. Students can connect in a couple different ways. Of course, like I said, everything is taught live. So if you are able to attend those live lectures, you can ask questions during class. You can interact with your classmates. The main way we communicate at the Data Incubator in both our online courses and in our fellowship is through Slack. I'm sure I'm describing this incorrectly, but Slack's essentially a chat app where you can ask questions, upload files, share bits of your code, etc. Slack, we have a dedicated channel for each of our foundations cohorts. So everyone in your cohort will be in there as well as myself and Don. So that's, if you have a question, that's a great way to surface it. And of course, email. Don's really wonderful about making himself available to students when they do have questions or need to talk through something. So that's another really big benefit of the course is that you actually have, a live person to ask questions to. If you're one of those people who can, take a self-taught class and master it, that's great. But I feel like that's about 5% of people really. So it's really important to have live feedback and somebody to interact with. Another nice thing is that because all of your classmates are in that Slack channel, they very often will be able to answer your questions as well. One of the cool things to watch is how students apply their backgrounds. They come from very different fields and they have very different levels of experience, but they interact in that Slack room, and you can see folks with specific backgrounds that are helpful to the question. Actually helping rather than Don having to do it all himself. They actually are able to answer each other's questions, which is really great.
Yeah, that's great because I usually encourage students on the Slack channels like, hey, I'm not awake 24 hours a day. I'm doing other stuff. I try to answer your questions as soon as possible, but help each other out. And it's very great because I see students who are ingesting the material and are processing it and are going to actively help each other out. And then when you teach someone, you're forced to really understand the material. And then usually when people are helping each other out, I make sure I observe the content to make sure they're not saying anything incorrectly. And I tend to say, okay, yeah, that's great. You're doing a good job. Or perhaps I add or correct something slightly. Okay, mostly correct, but you consider this other situation. So I do supervise that interaction. I really encourage it because that's active learning. And to talk about the lectures, our lectures aren't static lectures. They're very interactive. One of the things that we do is that we provide you a cloud machine to do your work, and all our lectures are based upon this cloud machine. This is useful for various reasons. There's no need to set up anything on your end. You just have to log on to the cloud machine. The environment is set up with the proper packages, the versions that are going to interact properly with each other. And then we have these lecture notebooks through something called Jupyter Notebook. It's a nice tool where you can have text and code interspersed. And we tend to go through these lectures, we run cells that demonstrate how the code runs. And with these cells, you can always go back to them and modify certain parameters to do that active learning to see, okay, if I change these parameters, how it's going to change the analysis, or how it's going to change my result. Get you guys processing and thinking the critical questions you should be asking yourself to process this information, make sure you really retain the knowledge and master it.
Excellent. Thank you, Don. So we actually had a couple questions pop up in the chat. I just want to remind everybody that's watching that we will take your questions in the chat. And also, if you are looking for a way to get more information about our Data Science Foundations course, the URL for that is below in the description of the video here. So the question that we have here is, first there's one that's a little off topic, so I'll get to that one second. But the second question we have here is that there are a number of data science courses out there at differing costs. Why should we develop our knowledge using data science foundations? So maybe Sarah, you could talk a little bit about how our data science foundations course differs from, say, a self-taught Coursera course, or courses that other companies offer that are introductory data science courses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've already touched on a couple of the differentiators, but I'll run through them again. So I would say the biggest difference, the biggest advantage of data science foundations over similar courses is, of course, Don. Having the ability to ask questions, work on projects, get feedback on code that you're writing. That's really valuable. Especially as you're starting out in data science, having a resource, somebody who's dedicated to actually helping you advance in this topic, that's a huge plus.
And sorry, Sarah, the classes are live instruction, right?
Yes,
So
everything is live.
Can interact with Don live, can ask questions live. There's that feedback immediately.
Right. Exactly. And of course, if you're not able to attend those live lectures, everything is recorded and shared the next day. So you can actually watch whenever your schedule allows, which I would say is another benefit of this course. You can actually, versus sitting in a classroom for 3 days, you actually have the time to really absorb the material, and you can go back and reference it at any point. You retain access to those lecture videos in perpetuity. They're on YouTube. So as long as YouTube exists, you've got those videos.
And then you can also say you watch a video later, you could connect with Don, on the next day or something, or connect with your classmates as well via Slack, which you spoke about earlier. But there's some people that may have just joined us. But we provide that channel for people to connect with each other and connect with Don outside of the class hours as well, right?
Of course, right. So, you actually have a lot of time to work on this independently. Don did mention this, that the best way to learn something is by working on it independently and then teaching it to somebody else. That's a big part of our philosophy at the Data Incubator. We're very big proponents of project-based learning. So I would say another differentiator between foundations and a similar course is our mini projects. You work on 2 over the course of 8 weeks, and each one of those is designed to, as closely as possible, mimic a real-world scenario where you need to actually apply the skills that you're learning in lecture. So we're very hands-on, and we're extremely focused on the practical application. So the lecture, I think is a really good start. If you're watching Coursera, I think a lot of those are focused a bit more on the theory behind certain topics rather than the actual practical application. Our tech stack and our projects allow us to actually, teach you and then ask you to, we give you a data set and we ask you a question, or we ask you to solve a problem, and then you work on it independently. The same way that, you'd be tasked with a project if you were to be a data scientist in industry. So the mini projects, I would say, are the other sort of differentiator. And then, of course, as Don kind of recapped, our Jupyter Hub, your virtual cloud computer that you use, that negates the requirement. You don't have to install anything on your personal computer, and it replicates a learning environment that would be similar to what you'd be using in industry. So of course, not having to install anything on your computer, not being restricted by your machine's, processing capability, that's also another advantage.
And the many projects use actual real data. So it's not
That's
like
right.
we fabricated this data that's ideal, that only works for certain conditions. This is actual real world data.
Right.
And in fact, usually, so the nice thing about having the interactivity is that if I understand that certain students are having difficulty for a certain concept, then what I'll do is perhaps in lecture for the first 5-10 minutes, I'll say, hey, I notice you guys are having difficulty on this subject. That's fine. That's rather difficult. Let me go ahead and spend some time to reinforce that concept, or perhaps think of a different way to express that idea. And the other thing about having this this style of lecture is that I'm thinking about this past foundations. I know there was a lot of close primary results for the elections, and I was thinking, perhaps I can craft a very quick question to have the students work on based upon probability and statistics. So there I actually use actual election results to say, hey, answer these questions based upon this actual data.
That's really cool. I didn't know you did that.
It was kind of on the fly. Like I was just, I was like,
Yeah.
like, you know what? This is something similar we talked about in class. Let me go ahead and bring it up, because this is, hey, you can use the knowledge that we're talking about with the stuff we're dealing with in class to answer actual questions with real world data.
Exactly. We're very much focused on the real world practical application and being a hands-on education company. And that methodology applies to our online courses, but it's also very visible in our data science fellowship.
Yeah, and the other thing I one time did for lecture is I brought up some of the stuff I worked on my PhD. Say, hey, look, I had to use this technique for my PhD. Let's go ahead and examine it.
Awesome. So another question we have in the chat here, and I just want to remind everyone to please put your questions in the chat if you have them. And so the question that we got here is it good to use regression models, for example, random forest, to try to predict future stock prices? Is that a good approach? So
that one's for John.
Quick answer for that. And
Yeah,
then maybe just talk about regression models that are, if we cover regression models in the course, and how someone could maybe start to answer that question of how to predict stock prices with something that they'll learn in the course.
Yeah, you can go ahead and use something like random forest once you've detrend your signal, or you can go ahead and use sort of traditional time series models like ARIMA. Regarding like machine learning models and regression, we spend the last 2 weeks of the course talking about the machine learning. In fact, today's lecture, we're doing foundations, we're going to do sort of like an interactive session regarding, I'm going to present them a data set and say, okay, given what we've seen so far, let's go ahead and think through this question. So use some of the principles, some of the concepts to build a machine learning model to answer this question. And going back to the whole idea of getting, the whole active learning, getting students engaged in the material rather than just being passive and just kind of going 1 year, in 1 year and out the other. Get them to think the critical questions and start building these models.
Right. Excellent. So, okay, we are running down on time and out of questions right now. If anybody else has any last minute questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to start wrapping up here. And all right, well, thank you everybody for visiting us and for joining us for the info session today. Again, my name is Sean Bolin. I'm the marketing coordinator. I'm joined by Sarah, our online learning director. We got one last question here. Hector Cross is asking about what is your favorite tool for data science?
Yeah, I would say in general Python, but it's basically a combination of pandas and scikit-learn.
So if anybody else has questions, go ahead and put them in there. We'll try and get them at the end. But again, my name is Sean. Sarah, our online learning director, is with me, as well as Don, director for our foundations course. Again, about the Data Incubator, we are a data science education company. We started as a fellowship program for people with PhDs and master's degrees to transition from academia to industry by getting trained through an 8-week boot camp and connected with hiring partners to then go on to actual positions as full-time data scientists. Now we also offer corporate training for organizations that are looking to upskill their entire workforce, as well as hiring services for talented data scientists that have come through our fellowship. and online courses. Beyond our foundations course, we also have a machine learning course that is running this September. We also have a data visualization course that's coming out later this year, and data science for business leaders, which is our newest course, which is going to be running later this year as well. You can find out all the information about this at our website, www.thedataincubator.com. And you can find information about the Foundations course specifically at the link in the description of this video. And thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Don, for joining me. And everyone, I hope you have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.